Hello everyone and welcome to the Law and Crime Trial Network. I'm Brian Buckmeyer and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours this afternoon. We are covering the press conference out of Moscow, Idaho, where a suspect has been named in connection to the University of Idaho student murders. Up until this point, there have been very few leads as to who killed the 4 students and why. But in just half an hour, Moscow police will give us more information on suspect Brian Christopher Koberger. The 28-year-old was found in northeast Pennsylvania and brought to Monroe County Courthouse. The 4 students are believed to have been stabbed to death in the early morning hours of November 13th, likely asleep at the time. The police have been on the lookout for a 2011 to 2013 white Honda Elantra thought to have been near the house around the time in question. We will find out together if this vehicle has any connection to the suspect. But while we wait for the presser to begin, let's watch some of the memorial service where loved ones spoke out earlier this month.
Susanna and Ethan, the 2 best friends but perfect pair together. They had this unstoppable, loving relationship. They both would look at each other with so much love. Everyone knew they were the perfect duo. They both had this fun, passionate, crazy, but good energy. They both were the kind of people who cared about everyone and would help anyone. Xana was the life of the party. If she was there, it was going to be great. But Xana was so much more than a girl who could just have fun. She was strong, intelligent, hardworking, and a beautiful person. Xana was taking this math class, a class I was also taking, and the amount of effort and hard work she put into that class was the only reason I tried to pass it. She would constantly uplift me and tell me I could do it. Xana was also a very big people person. She could make a conversation with anyone, any friend and any parent. She loved the parents, especially the moms. Every tailgate, she would talk to a new mom, get their phone number, and text them. Everyone that got the chance to know her loved her. I was and am so lucky to have experienced a life with her, as her being one of my closest friends. I didn't know Ethan until this semester. I wish I would have gotten to know him more. He was so sweet and loving to Xana. Xana was like his whole world, and you could see it in him. While Ethan was like a friend, he was also like an older brother to me. I got to experience what an older brother would be like. He was this goofy guy who I could make sarcastic jokes to. Every time I saw him, he'd give the sarcastic jokes right back. He was also loving to my friends and to me. He cared like Xana about everyone. He was easygoing and easy to talk to. I'm glad I got the time I had to know Ethan, and I'm so thankful to have gotten to know such an amazing person. I know somewhere Xana and Ethan are together, keeping each other company, watching us and telling us it's okay and that we have each other. Maddie and Kaylee, the inseparable duo, the 2 best friends that were like sisters. Maddie and Kaylee were like second moms to me. They taught me a lot on how to be a responsible adult, but also how to live life happy. They changed the way I look at life and how to enjoy life to the fullest. Maddie was the cute ray of sunshine. She didn't ever have a negative thought in her mind. I don't think I ever have seen Maddie stressed about anything. This happy-go-lucky kind of girl who loved life to the fullest. I got to know Maddie last year and loved her when I met her. And then I got the chance to get closer with her this year. I'm so lucky to have gotten to experience life with her in it. She had this passionate love for everyone. Everyone who knew her got to feel her love. And she was so compassionate to everyone and wanted everyone to be happy. She got this new hot pink puffy jacket and wore it everywhere. She was a very big pink color kind of girl. She would do this cute little skipping dance every time I saw her. She just had these cute little mannerisms that I loved. She was such a beautiful person inside and out. She had pretty much her whole life together. I missed seeing her little dances when we would go out and seeing her laugh and smile. I loved seeing her smile because when she would smile, you could see her eyes and her little button nose smile too. And Kaylee was one of the most hardworking, strong, driven people I have ever met. If she wanted to do something, she'd work for it. She was the kind of person that I look up to. She, like Maddie, had her whole life together. A few weeks ago, she had bought a Range Rover all by herself. When I went to see her and she had a brand new Range Rover, I remember just thinking, holy crap, Kaylee, I'm so proud of you, and she was able to buy it all by herself. Even though she was a girl so driven and hardworking, she loved to have fun and to joke around. She would come up to a couple of us and be like, guys, you know how I'm like such a prankster and just love to prank people? And she would start laughing, and we would laugh and get all excited to do a little prank on one of our friends. And then we'd proceed to start the prank. Kaylee would just be laughing and smiling about how funny it was. She also had one of the brightest smiles, and I would always compliment her to make sure she knew she did. And she would be like, really? And get so happy when I complimented her. To my 4 best friends who deserve to live a long, happy life, my life was greatly impacted to have known these 4 beautiful people. My people who changed my life in so many ways and made me so happy. I know it will be hard to not have the 4 of them in our lives, but I know Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee would want us to live life and be happy, and they would want us to celebrate their lives. To the people I will always love forever, and to the people I will remember and miss so much, to Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee. And this is from Bethany. Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were truly all one of a kind. They all lit up any room they walked into and were gifts to this world. I wish every day that I could give them all one last hug and say how much I loved them. I've thought a lot about what I would say to each of them if I could. Kaylee, you were truly one of the funniest people I've ever known. No matter what you said or what story you were telling, you found a way to make it so funny and have us all laughing. You were so sweet and giving. I was always so impressed by how you knew what you wanted and you would go after it and nothing would stop you. You always lit up a room with your big smile and big personality that was so lovable and enjoyable. And I will love and miss you forever.
Powerful and heartbreaking words as the victims are remembered by their family members. Well, I have Law and Crime correspondent Anjanette Levy here with me, along with former Pennsylvania District Attorney Matthew Mangino. Thank you both for joining me. Matt, I'll start with you. According to the documents from Monroe County Court, the suspect is being held without bail for extradition on first-degree murder charges. Can you break down for our viewers what this process will likely look like from here on out?
Well, Brian, initially the authorities in Idaho would have contacted the governor of Pennsylvania and asked for a warrant to be issued for the extradition of this person based on the charge of first-degree murder in Idaho. So this is really not a simple process. The governor has to be assured that, in fact, there's probable cause for this arrest. This is actually the person that they're seeking in terms of identification. And once the governor is satisfied with that, then he can empower whatever law enforcement agency, whether it's the Pennsylvania State Police or the local police department in Scranton or Monroe County, and issue a warrant to pick up the defendant and then to deliver that defendant to Idaho. But that's not the end of the process here in Pennsylvania. That the defendant has the right to do a couple of things. He could waive his extradition, which means he admits he's the person, that there's probable cause, send me back to Idaho to face these charges. Or he can challenge extradition, which then would require that there be a hearing in Monroe County within 30 days of him being taken into custody, and some decision made within 60 days whether or not he's going to be sent back to Idaho to face these charges. So we're at a point where we don't really know what direction this defendant is going to go.
Matt, so I'm a defense attorney as well. I want to ask just one quick follow-up question you can answer in just a few seconds. How sure would Idaho have to be that Bryan Kohberger is their man in order for Pennsylvania to hold him like this? How sure do they have to be?
Well, it would be similar to a preliminary hearing or a probable cause hearing. Do they have probable cause to issue a warrant for his arrest? And is he, in fact, the person who they are looking for? Do they have the right individual? And if that's satisfied in Pennsylvania, regardless if he challenges it or not, ultimately he will be delivered to the authorities in Idaho.
All right, interesting. Now, Anjanette, the memorial service for victims Kaylee and Maddie is today. Is this new information coming out a relief or heartache for the family and loved ones?
Well, Brian, I would think it would certainly be bittersweet. There was that memorial service planned for today in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where Kaylee and Maddie are from originally. They were like sisters. We've heard that many times. Kaylee Gonsalves, Maddie Mogan grew up together. They went to college together. And Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee's father, said they died in the same bed together. So I'm sure this is bittersweet. I've reached out. There hasn't been much that the family has said, but it won't bring Maddie and Kaylee and Ethan and Xana back, but there has to be some sense of relief among family members that this is happening, that an arrest has been made, and it appears the police are confident this is their man. I think we should talk a little bit about what happened today. It's our understanding that this man, Brian Christopher Coburg, was arrested at a house in the Pocono Mountains or in that area in Pennsylvania. He is a PhD student, a PhD candidate in criminal justice and criminology at Washington State University. At Washington State University, when I was in Moscow, Idaho, is just a short distance away. It's about 10 miles away, a 15-minute drive from Moscow, Idaho. Very close. Moscow, Idaho is basically on the state line with Washington and Idaho. So this would not have taken long for somebody to possibly drive from that area to Moscow. Also not uncommon for students at Washington State to come over to Moscow, Idaho. I've been told by people in town, basically the bars are considered better there in Moscow than they are in the Pullman area where Washington State University is. And so it's not uncommon for people to come over that way. We're hoping to get more information about the relationship between this man, Brian Kohberger, and the people who lived in the house on King Road. At this point, we just don't know that. We don't know if he knew any of the people who lived there. But it's very interesting to me that he is a PhD student in criminal justice and criminology and attending a college nearby and now arrested in Pennsylvania, where he is from. I've actually heard from people who went to high school with this guy. They haven't had much to say about him so far, but we do know he is originally from Pennsylvania, and that's likely why he was there when he was taken into custody early this morning.
Yeah, and Janet, real quick as well, question for you. You've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of pressers. What's the biggest piece of information you're expecting to get from this presser?
Well, as you know, they have been really tight-lipped throughout this investigation. They haven't given out a lot of information. I want them to tell us everything, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get much in the way of details. This man is somebody who's been taken into custody, and it appears he's been arrested on a complaint and not an indictment. So this will have to go through, I'm assuming, the grand jury process in Idaho. I want them to lay out how they found this guy, how they were alerted to him, whether or not he has that white Hyundai Elantra that they've been searching for. I want to know all of those things, of course, but I don't know if we'll get all of that. I just want to know the connection, first of all, and why they believe he did this. And if he said anything, they likely won't tell us if he made a statement or anything like that. Typically, that's not something that they're allowed to discuss, but you never know. Maybe we will get some information about that.
Yeah. So, Matt, Anjanette kind of led me into this question. She said, arrested on a complaint, not an indictment, expecting the grand jury to be impaneled. If a grand jury is impaneled, how long would that take? What would that look like? And will we get more information if a grand jury does indict him?
Well, if a grand jury is convened, that's going to be confidential. So everything that's conducted before the grand jury, we're not going to know about. It's not going to be public information. And in fact, people who are part of the grand jury and court personnel aren't allowed to speak about that. I'm not exactly sure of the process in Idaho. Here in Pennsylvania, for instance, there would not need to be a grand jury convened. This case would move forward by complaint, and a preliminary hearing or a probable cause hearing would be conducted to determine whether there's sufficient evidence for this case to go forward. So if it does go through the grand jury process, I don't expect that we're going to learn a lot more about this until there are indictments handed down.
Yeah. Now, Anjanette, you've had your finger literally on the pulse of this case since day one. You were down there in Idaho following the case, also on social media. So I'll throw out this theory for you, or this idea. A lot of people are thinking this couldn't have just been one person. So if one person's arrested and there are other potential suspects, do you think the Moscow police will again kind of play it close to the vest and not tell us anything in this presser?
Most certainly. And I expect them to continue to play it, hold their cards close to the vest. I do. I don't know. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm hoping they tell us everything. I always want to know everything, but we know how criminal investigations can go. I'm wondering if someone else could possibly be involved in this. 4 people killed in what appears to be a short amount of time. Early in the morning hours. I know there's been a lot of reporting that it was between 3 and 4 a.m. I've talked to people, with the Moscow PD who basically say, we've never put that out. Obviously, they think it was sometime after 3 a.m. that this happened. But it appears that this may have happened rather quickly since those roommates down below didn't appear to be alerted to any of this. The 2 roommates who survived, who were on the lower level of the house at King Road. So I don't know is really the answer to this question. It to me seems like possibly maybe there could have been somebody else, but it could possibly not be somebody else. We had heard some rumblings about a possible accessory or an accomplice, but I think we just have to wait and see. I would hope that we would have already found out about that if that was the case, since we were able to piece together that it was indeed Bryan Kohberger earlier this morning when we found out about the arrest.
Yeah. Now, Matt, you were not just a district attorney, you were the district attorney of Lawrence County in Pennsylvania. So I ask you this because of this. When I look at how the family members have been reacting to the lack of information that they've been receiving in this case, does this change anything? Now that someone's been arrested on a complaint, do the family members now get more information about what happened? Because, like you said, they had probable cause to make a warrant. That means they must have enough information that this is their guy.
Well, when I served as district attorney, and whenever we were involved in a high-profile case in which there was a lot of media attention, we tried to keep the family informed, more than we would release to the public, and hope that we could be confident in their confidentiality and not revealing those things, because it's very important, to keep some very important facts from the public. You want to hold things back so that you know when you're on the right track and you're getting tips and leads that might help you pursue the case, as opposed to every sort of crazy that comes out and says they know something. So you always leave things out. Here, obviously, Moscow police and the Idaho authorities were being very secretive about the details of their investigation. I mean, this really caught everybody off guard that this arrest was made today, when we hadn't had many briefings lately, and those briefings haven't divulged a lot of detail. So that's not unusual to work an investigation like that. But I always think it's important to keep family members, the families of victims, in the loop, sort of, close to the investigation, so that they know that progress is being made, although the public doesn't know that progress is being made. But everybody has a different approach to these types of cases, and this is a horrible, horrendous murder or series of murders, and so everybody has a different way of approaching an investigation.
Yeah, as much as I want to know why they believe it's Kohberger, I'm hoping that the family members already know more than us now. Of course, we are continuing to wait for this presser where we're supposed to find out more about Bryan Christopher Kohberger, the man arrested in eastern Pennsylvania for the murders of these 4 Idaho College University students. Now, I'm also getting questions from YouTube. I'm sorry if I mispronounced anyone's name. Espen Carlson asked the question, is Idaho a death penalty state? I just had to Google it really quickly. Yes, they are. And I think Keiko to Keiko, did the press conference end already? It did not. And Jeanette, and I'll probably ask Matt the same question as well, is this, Idaho has the death penalty. Do you think this is the case that the prosecution will seek the death penalty?
Well, on its face, I do believe Idaho has a death penalty, and I was going to Google it just to be sure. But on its face, it has all the markings of a death penalty case. I would be shocked if they didn't seek the death penalty. You have 4 people murdered in their beds while they were sleeping. Some of them had defensive wounds. We've heard that in prior press conferences from the police. I can't even imagine. I mean, there's no good reason, there's no justifiable reason to kill anybody. I mean, you can't argue that this was self-defense. Okay, there's just no way that you're going to be able to argue that. Everything we've been able to glean from this case is that somebody, if you kind of piece together the little tidbits we've learned, not only from being on the ground there, but everything we've heard from the police, this is a person who went into this house under the cover of darkness and slaughtered 4 people. Whether one person was the target or 2 or all 4, I can't imagine all 4 were. I think we just have to wait and see what we can find out about this. But I can't imagine the prosecution not seeking the death penalty. It's 4 people. So it seems ripe for that, in my opinion.
All right, Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question. I know Zane A is asking, will they show the press conference? Yes, they will. But I'm going to add a little bit of a twist to it for you, Matt, because I know we got to sign you off soon. And thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year. But will Idaho seek the death penalty? Remember, in Florida, the Parkland school shooter just dodged the death penalty, and arguably that was a more heinous crime. Do you think if they seek the death penalty that they'll be successful here, considering that Florida life sentence?
Well, Brian, as you know, when you're looking at the death penalty, in order to make that decision, and there's really no guidelines of how a prosecutor makes a decision whether or not to seek the death penalty. If they believe, if a prosecutor believes there are aggravating circumstances that exist, and it's first-degree murder, and this certainly looks like it would fit into both of those categories, then the prosecutor has the right to proceed and seek the death penalty. So, that analysis, I don't think, is going to take a lot of time in this case. This is a terrible, heinous case. Although Idaho has not used the death penalty very often, it was reinstated after Furman versus Georgia nullified all death penalties. So they have it, but they haven't used it regularly. But this seems to be a case, at least initially, as we look at it, that cries out for the death penalty.
Matt, I want to slide one in real quick. I know at 4 o'clock you got to leave because Caitlin's got a question that I think is perfect for you. You can answer as quickly or as long as you want. Would it make a difference that he is from Pennsylvania? Does that alter anything, sentencing or anything else? So he's from Pennsylvania, a crime in Idaho. Does it change anything?
No, it doesn't. Pennsylvania also has the death penalty, and the death penalty has been used very infrequently in Pennsylvania. But it's not like an international situation where a country who's opposed to the death penalty could refuse to extradite a person back to the United States who's facing the death penalty. It's not the same way in the United States among the 50 states. There's a compact, there's a federal extradition statute that's been created, and there are certain guidelines. As long as you can prove that there's probable cause for this arrest, and that you can prove this, in fact, is the guy that you're seeking, there really isn't any authority for a state to refuse to extradite an individual, and especially not because we don't have the death penalty in our state, and we're not going to extradite them to a death penalty state where they're going to seek the death penalty. That's just not the case in the United States.
All right. Thank you for that, Matt. And again, thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
All right, so we're going to continue. Of course, if you're just joining us now, the press conference for the police have named on a suspect in the death and murders of 4 Idaho students from the university. They believe it is Brian Christopher Kohberger. He was arrested in the Pocono area of Pennsylvania. He is set to be extradited back to Idaho. I have Law and Crime correspondent Anjanette Levy, who has been on the ground with this case, following this from day one. And of course, we're answering questions from you on YouTube. So please send your questions there. Angie and I will continue to answer them. Angie, I have this one from Nadia S. Will he be able to complete his PhD in prison if found guilty? I wonder if he planned all of this for his research he posted about. There seems to be some sort of Reddit post, I think, where he's had some kind of peculiar research ideas. So do you think he gets to finish his education in jail?
You know, I've heard of people getting actual bachelor's degrees in prison or while they've been incarcerated. I've never heard of somebody getting a PhD while they've been incarcerated. I don't know how you would conduct your research, so I can't really answer that question. I do, you know, I think we've all heard, though, of people getting college degrees while they've been incarcerated. But that's kind of putting the cart before the horse here. You know, I know they couch this by saying if he's convicted. We're a long way away from that. We don't know what the evidence is in this case. We don't know if this case goes to trial. We don't know if there's a plea bargain. You know as well as I do, Brian, this is a process that unfolds in these cases. He will likely enter a not guilty plea at first. His attorneys will be given the discovery. That's the evidence that the prosecution and the police have gathered against this person. And then things will proceed from there. It will move through the courts. So I'm very interested to hear what the police have to tell us when this press conference gets underway just in a few minutes.
Now, Angela, I'm curious because it seemed like to me this came out of nowhere. I think even at Law and Crime, we were kind of like, all right, New Year's is coming. We'll see what happens with this case in 2023. Were there any hints that they were going to arrest someone yesterday or the day before? I thought they just said they had thousands of leads.
You know, there were a lot of people who watched the latest update yesterday from Chief Fry, and there was another interview that he conducted also with a local television station out there in the Idaho area. I think it was a Spokane, Washington television station, and it sounded people noted in looking at him and listening to what he had to say that he sounded very optimistic and that he sounded upbeat. And the press release, the little release they sent out yesterday, it was like a 1 minute long video clip that they posted on YouTube. He thanked the public for their tips. So I think a lot of people just felt like his mood was lighter. And a lot of people there were all these kind of rumblings online. And I think we had also heard some things here at Law and Crime, some of us had, that something might be coming soon. But of course, we couldn't get any detailed information about that. We just kind of heard rumblings. So I think that a lot of people felt that Chief Fry, not only that local TV interview that he did, but also the press release they put out yesterday with the 1 minute long video clip, people felt like they had this kind of feeling that something might be coming and that he seemed upbeat. So as upbeat as you can when talking about a murder investigation. So I don't know if it was a complete shock. Obviously, everything has been so secret in this place, in this investigation, and kept under wraps. They haven't released any information. And for as maddening and irritating as that is for us who work in the news business, we want to know everything. I mean, truth be told, that's how criminal investigations are supposed to be conducted. So I'm interested to hear what we will hear in the next few minutes.
Yeah, so we got two more questions. I'll take the first one. It's Caitlin. I'm told that you have great questions, so thank you for asking. She said, I might be wrong, but apparently he doesn't have bail. How significant is this? Typically, when people are extradited, bail is not set. They're in what's called remand status, so no amount of money or bond can get them out. And the reason why that is because if you're arrested in Pennsylvania, if you have to go to another state, they don't want you bonding out to interrupt that extradition process. Typically, they remand when they go to the other state. If there are reasons not to have remand put in place, bail might be set. But in a case like this, I don't think bail is going to be given, or it's going to be very, very high. This question comes from Megan Easton. I'm going to throw it to you, Anjanette. Do you think contacting the families for comments is really necessary? Shouldn't we let them grieve in peace? What's your thoughts on that?
You know, I think we should probably reach out to them, just offer them the opportunity or if they wish. I think that that's the right thing to do. They may want to say something. All of the families, there are 4 families here who are grieving and who've lost their loved ones for no reason at all. So I think that, I don't think you need to hound them. It's all in how you approach these things, but they may have something that they wish to say. So I think, it's all in your approach.
Yeah. Well, I think we're being joined by two other guests here at the Law and Crime Network. We've got Joe Giglione, retired NYPD sergeant and professor of law, of police science, criminal justice, and author of Criminal Investigation Function textbook. And we also have Bobby Cachone, former FBI agent. Thank you both for joining us. Again, if you're just joining in now, we are waiting for the presser. It's supposed to start now, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. local time. So we're just asking questions. Well, it's actually live in the presser time now. Again, we're going to be jumping right into the presser for the murder of the 4 Idaho University students. They have a suspect arrested.
Federal Bureau of Investigation detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohlberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on a warrant for murders of Ethan, Zana, Madison, and Kaylee. I want to personally thank these agencies for their assistance in this case. Kohlberger resides in Pullman, Washington, and is a graduate student at Washington State University. We will provide as much information as we can about the extradition to Idaho and the criminal process. However, due to Idaho state law, we are limited in what information we can release today until Kohlberger has his initial appearance in Idaho court. I want to express my appreciation to our local community, the people of Idaho, and those throughout our nation who provided information to help us investigate these murders has been very impressive. We've received over 19,000 tips, and we've conducted over 300 interviews. To recap this case, on the evening of November 12th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at about 1:56 a.m. after visiting a local bar and street food vendor. Ethan and Zana were at the Sigma Chi house before arriving home around 1:45 a.m. The 2 surviving roommates had also been in the community but returned around 1 a.m. On the morning of November 13th, a 911 call was made at 11:58 a.m. reporting an unconscious person at the residence. The call came from inside the home from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Moscow police responded and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. On November 17th, autopsies were conducted, and the Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 victims. The cause and manner of death was homicide by stabbing. Some had defensive wounds, and each had been stabbed multiple times. These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students. However, we do believe justice will be found through the criminal process. This was a very complex and extensive case. We developed a clear picture over time, and we stand assured that the work is not done, but be assured the work is not done. This has just started. Since November, we have remained laser focused on pursuing every lead in our pursuit of justice for the victims and their families. I recognize the frustration with the lack of information that's been released. However, providing any details in this criminal investigation might have tainted the upcoming criminal prosecution or alerted the suspect of our progress. We will continue to provide as much information as we can as the process moves forward. Today, I want to specifically thank our dedicated Moscow Police Department detectives, patrol officers, the Idaho State detectives, the Idaho State troopers, and their crime lab technicians and scientists, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the resources and personnel to conduct this massive investigation. It was the dedication of them and the persistence and the numerous hours that led to an arrest. Fortunately, These highly skilled people work together as a cohesive team to solve this case. I also want to thank our community and the nation. Over the past 6 weeks, I've been continually reminded of how much our community cares. Locally, public support has been exceptional with kind words, food for investigators, and letters of support. You will never know how much your words of encouragement help us through these trying times. I appreciate each of you and each of your kindness. Agencies and individuals from across the nation have reached out to us to express their support to this department. I'm reminded how our Moscow community, our families, and the nation has been impacted by this daily. Finally, I do want to thank our media partners for the help. You kept this in the news, you helped us with tips, you kept things going, and we truly appreciate that. And you are the product of those 19,000 tips that we received, which is an impressive number. I would like to invite Bill Thompson, the county prosecutor, up at this time.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the Latah County prosecutor. And it's sad to be here, but happy to be here at the same time. As Chief Fry indicated, a criminal complaint was filed yesterday here in Latah County, charging the defendant, Mr. Kohlberger, with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to felony burglary, which involves entering the residence with the intent to commit the crime of murder. Mr. Kohlberger, and let me preface, there's a pending case now in court, and I and my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohlberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all of the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on. So please have patience with us on that. We hope to get that to you as soon as we can. As far as Mr. Kohlberger, I can share with you that he is a graduate student at Washington State University and has an apartment residence over in Pullman. He has had an initial appearance in front of a judge in Pennsylvania. He is being held without bond, and the warrant from our magistrate judge here also provides for no bond. We understand that he's scheduled to be back in court in Pennsylvania next Tuesday afternoon, and that a public defender has been appointed for him there. The process at this point is, since he was arrested in another state, he has the opportunity to either waive extradition and return voluntarily to the state of Idaho, or if he prefers not to waive extradition, then we will initiate extradition proceedings through our governor's office. If we do that, it can take a while for him to get here. So again, I'm asking for your patience and understand that's just the way the system works. Once he gets here, he'll have an initial appearance with our magistrate. They'll deal with issues such as making sure counsel is, competent counsel is representing him, and the case will be scheduled for further hearings. Your primary source of factual information is going to be the court record, because that's what the Supreme Court says we need to refer you to. So please pay attention to what's going on in court and have people there to watch and hear what's being said. As an attorney, myself and my office, we are limited on what we are allowed by the courts to say outside of the courtroom. So please just work with us. Finally, as the chief indicated, this is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning. You all now know the name of the person who has been charged with these offenses. Please get that information out there. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward, Call the tip line. Report anything you know about him to help the investigators and eventually our office and the court system understand fully everything there is to know about not only the individual, but what happened and why. Next, I'll introduce Colonel Ked Wells from the Idaho State Police. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kedrick Wills. I serve as the director of the Idaho State Police and certainly want to express our appreciation for your attendance here today. These tragic murders took 4 young, vibrant lives from our community. Nothing we do can bring them back. The only thing that we can do in law enforcement to honor their memories that we know of is to bring this to a successful conclusion. This has been a very difficult time for the families, the university, the community, and the state of Idaho. However, it is also proven that communities come together in tough times. Certainly appreciate the support of the local community and our national audience that has been following us as our investigators have worked through this case. I'm thankful also to you, the media partners, who have helped keep this case in the forefront that generates the tips and we hope will continue to generate information that will help us to a conclusion of this proceeding. I'd like to express our appreciation on behalf of the Idaho State Police to Chief Fry, his leadership, and the entire Moscow Police Department for the way that they handled this from the very beginning. He directed the right people to the right positions that led us to this conclusion today. I've had the utmost confidence in this investigation and in Chief Fry, as well as in Mr. Bill Thompson and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office, who've been a great partner throughout this. Nothing has deterred the commitment of the investigators who've worked on this case, regardless of the organization they represent. It's been very trying and very difficult, as you know, that it has been on those investigators as they do the tedious work that they're so good at doing. The partnerships is what's led here as well. The partnerships between Moscow Police Department, I'd like to express our appreciation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specifically the special agent in charge out of the Salt Lake City Division, Dennis Rice, and also the work that happened in the last 24 hours in Pennsylvania with the arrest with the Pennsylvania State Police and Colonel Evanchik with the Pennsylvania State Police. We appreciate what they've done across the nation to help us as well. As Bill shared, this investigation is far from over. In fact, I appreciate what he shared, that this is not an ending, but rather a new beginning. The difference now is, as he shared, that we are dictated what information we can share by the court process and by laws in our state of Idaho. And so we will share, as he shared, Mr. Thompson is absolutely committed to share everything he can share through the court process. We've got to make sure that we don't get in front of that process. And we really deeply appreciate everybody's support here. The relationships that were forged here and the partnerships that were forged have led to this. And based on that is why we're here today. And we continue to believe that the best way we can honor these 4 lives that have been taken is to make sure that we have a successful outcome here. One of the partnerships that's been forged throughout this is a partnership with the University of Idaho. And on that, I'd like to introduce the president of the University of Idaho, Mr. Scott Green.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Scott Green, President of the University of Idaho. Today's news of arrest is a welcome one. It's relief to our university, our community, and our extended Vandal family. The outpouring of support over the past 6 weeks helped sustain us during the most trying time. It provided the strength that helped us navigate the international scrutiny visited on our students and employees. We are truly thankful for the compassion and acts of kindness shown to our community. Kindness is contagious, and it provided the light that reclaimed ground lost to evil and darkness. We first want to acknowledge and thank Governor Little for the early promise of financial support that enabled the university to secure our campus and focus on helping our students and our employees in the wake of the crimes. We also appreciate the Idaho State Police and the highly visible security presence that brought comfort and calm to a community shocked and confused by the senseless crimes. We never lost faith that this case would be solved and are grateful for the hard work of the Moscow Police Department and their law enforcement partners. Vast and committed FBI resources brought important expertise to this complex case. Across the board, dedicated, highly competent personnel worked this case to arrest. This crime has nevertheless left a mark on our university, our community, and our state. While we cannot bring back Maddie, Kaylee, Zana, and Ethan, we can thoughtfully and purposefully carry their legacy forward in the work that we do. Our students come first, and that was proven each and every day of this investigation. We are committed to safely delivering the college town atmosphere, campus experience, and high-touch quality education for which the University of Idaho is known. With time, we will heal. We will move forward together, and we will remain Vandal strong. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Chief Fry.
So now we will open the floor to questions. However, I want to remind everyone, as Prosecutor Bill Thompson explained, any factual information regarding the arrest of Kohlberger is currently sealed per Idaho law and will not be released until he has appeared in an Idaho court. Please formulate your questions accordingly. I recognize there are a lot of questions, and I will try to answer as many of them as I can.
Is there an evergreen or Argonaut reporter?
Lauren Patterson, Northwest Public Broadcasting, Spokane Public Radio. I realize the records are sealed. I guess I'm not too familiar with how it works, but can you tell us what tip, what lead, what piece of evidence really led you all the way from Idaho to the suspect in Pennsylvania?
As I've said in the past, that's part of our investigation, and we won't be releasing that at this time. We will have those answers. We'll have them as soon as we can make those available to you.
Then a quick follow-up and a two-parter. Is our community safe, or is law enforcement still on the search for other suspects who might be involved in this attack?
What I can tell you is we have an individual in custody who committed these horrible crimes, and I do believe our community is safe, but we still need to be vigilant, right? We still have talked about this in the past. We always need to be aware of our surroundings and make sure that we're aware of what's going on.
Hi, Chief. How soon into the investigation did police and law enforcement begin to spot Mr. Kohlberger as a potential suspect? And a follow-up, how many tips, if you can say, were specifically related to Mr. Kohlberger?
To the tip part, honestly, I can't answer that question, so I'm not even going to speculate on that. On the other part, that's part of our investigation, and it will come out. I'd like the mic to please come right over here.
Thank you. Dana Griffin with NBC News. Can you confirm that Kohlberger asked whether or not anyone else had been arrested when he was in custody?
I cannot confirm that, or I'm not sure of that information, but that would still be a part of our investigation.
Did CODIS initially return any hits on this guy?
That's still part of our investigation. That will come out. If we could get somebody over here, please.
And then one final question. Is there any message to the online sleuths who slandered and harassed people who they believed were responsible?
There was a lot of speculation going on, and we've always said from the very beginning that we're the official message that comes out, and to pay attention to what we're putting out there to the press.
I'm Nancy Liu with News Nation, and we were over at the house this morning, and you told us that the remediation would begin today. It was suddenly stopped. Can you tell us why?
Yes. The house cleanup has been halted, and that came by a legal request from the court.
Christina Corbin, Fox News. Chief, have you identified a motive?
That is part of the investigation, and that will come out as we continue the investigation. But what we still ask is for people to continually send us things in the tip line. We are still looking for more information. We're still trying to build that picture, just like we have stated all along. We're putting all the pieces together, and that will help.
Chief Veronica Miracle with CNN. Any indication that the suspect knew the victims?
That's part of the investigation as well. It won't be something that will come out at this point in time, but as we continue the investigation and as this case goes to trial, that will be brought forth.
Have you spoken to the families? Can you tell us what they've told you today?
Are you talking the victims' families? Yeah, we have reached out to the victim's family as we always do. We've done that daily and we've continued to have contact with them.
Hey, Nate Sanford, you mentioned earlier that you're still seeking tips about Brian and that people should still share whatever information they have. Can you speak at all about what specifically people should be reaching out for, like if they know something?
I would say anything and everything. As we've said all along, we know what tips we're looking for. We will take those tips and we will have professionals look at those and decide which pieces of those we need to use for our case. So we ask that everybody would do that.
Angela Palermo, Idaho Statesman. Your department and other investigators on the case took a lot of flack for keeping information close to your chest. Are you glad that you did that, and were you worried about tipping the suspect off?
I will 100% stand behind the way that we handled this investigation. And this all started from day one with our patrol officers arriving on scene, locking down the scene, us calling in the Idaho State Police, us calling in the FBI, and keeping information that was pertinent to this case very, very tight. We want to have a situation where when this goes to trial, there is no doubt that we've done everything right and we've slowed down and we've continued to slow down. We'll continue to do that.
Hey, Chief. Have you guys found the murder weapon or the Hyundai Elantra?
So we are still looking for all pieces of evidence, but we are still looking for the weapon. And I will say that we have found an Elantra.
Stephanie Becker with CNN. Can you tell what it was like when you got the phone call when the police told you that they had your suspect?
I can tell you, for a lot of law enforcement, it was a fairly sleepless couple of days with as we were leading up to everything that we were doing. But what I can tell you is I have faith in those agencies across the nation. I have faith in our officers. I have faith in the FBI, and they did a great job. But sure, there was some times, even throughout the day, that we were always concerned.
Hi, Chief. Don, you're back at CBS News. Can you talk a little bit more about the suspect's connection to Pennsylvania?
All I know is that he lives in Pennsylvania.
Chief Guy Tannenbaum from Nonstop Local KHQ in Spokane. More about the Elantra. We saw reports that you mentioned that you recovered an Elantra, but can you specify where that was found? And we know that that was one of the biggest pieces of information you were asking from the public to tip. Were you able to provide an information on whether those tips led to this seizure of an Elantra?
That's still part of the investigation that will come out in the future.
Chief Glenn Mosley, Idaho Public Radio here in Moscow. The additional police presence in town and on campus, semester's coming. Is that going to continue?
You will continue to see state troopers in the area. You know, we're talking to Latah County as well. You will see a presence of us that we're always have up on campus. We have assigned officers to that. So you will continue to see a law enforcement presence. I'm going to take two more questions.
Hi, Chief. Julie Scott, ABC News. Can you tell us if you eventually had a license plate number to the Elantra and how you tracked it to Pullman?
That's still part of the investigation that will come out.
Chief, hi, Matt Lovelace with the Murrow College of Communication. I want to ask about Mr. Koberger as a graduate student at WSU. Are you aware of if he returned to campus after November 13th? And have you had any communication with departments on the WSU campus about his attendance?
So some of that is going to be followed up as we continue our investigation. We'll be asking some of those questions, but that'll come out in the near future. So what I do want to do is I want to thank you all. You really have been the national voice for us. You've given us the opportunity to get many, many tips. And I do appreciate everything you've done, and we'll continue to look forward to working with you in the future on this. So I'd like to thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
All right, so I'm back here with my guest. That was the presser for the arrest of Brian Koberger, a 28-year-old arrested in East Pennsylvania for the alleged murders of 4 Idaho University students. I'm joined again by Anjanette Levy, Bobby Chacon, and Joe Giacolone. Thank you for joining us all. Bobby, I want to start with you. First impressions from the presser. I know a lot wasn't given because of Idaho law, but you've got the expertise. Read between the lines. Tell us what you saw.
Well, I think the chief did a good job at outlining everything, and then the prosecutor did a good job at saying the limitations of what they could say at this point, because that's a sealed affidavit, the probable cause affidavit in support of the complaint, which results in the arrest warrant. So I think that they legally laid out the case for right now. I think that they kind of intimated that next Tuesday, when he appears in an Idaho court, hopefully, and when they can unseal that initial probable cause affidavit, that they'll be able to answer some of the questions that were posed today. They were in a difficult position today because this is not like a typical arrest where if he was arrested in Idaho, they could give us all this information. Now we have a couple of days where we'll be clamoring for this information in that sealed affidavit, but we won't get it until he appears in Idaho court per Idaho state law.
Yeah, Joe, similar question, but I'll add a little twist to it as well. A lot of people are probably thinking we didn't get much from this presser. Do you think that's fair, or did we get something from what they told us?
Well, we didn't get much because of the fact that they can't give us that information. So it just, it's going to further the speculative, parts of this investigation. It's going to continue, spinning out of control a little bit on the internet. But we're not worried about that. We weren't worried about that from the very beginning. This is probably the largest amount of pressure we've seen put on an investigation on the police department, the state police, and the FBI. And for those that said that the police weren't never going to solve it, I guess that also turned out not to be true too. So right now it looks like a great job and a great collaboration, right? Not like what you see on TV where the cops and the FBI are always fighting. This is exactly what happens in the real world. And it's about collaboration, and it's about looking into the avenues of how to solve a case. And I think we're going to find that all out real quick.
Yeah, it's very true. And Jeanette, kind of a two-part question. One, I heard that he said we had a connection to a Hyundai, sorry. He kind of was kind of picking and choosing his words there. Do you think the Hyundai Elantra had a connection to this case at the end of the day?
Oh, I definitely do. He said that they didn't find the murder weapon, but they found an Elantra. So I think they probably found what I had been calling the needle in the haystack. You remember they continued to say they had registrations for 22,000 Hyundai Elantras. And Brian, I'm going to tell you right now, I point blank asked them yesterday, did you find the Elantra? And they gave me the regular canned response. I emailed the email line, and it was we continue to make progress in locating the Elantra. And it was a yes or no question. So I think they found the Elantra, the needle in the haystack. And I just wanted to add too, the prosecutor there in Latah County, Bill Thompson, said, they will share what they can with us when they can, that the affidavit and the complaint will be unsealed when it can be unsealed. Frankly, I think they would love to tell us. I just kind of got that vibe that maybe they would love to tell us what happened and how they were led to this person, but they just can't at this time. So I think we will all be looking forward to that day when that complaint and the affidavit will be unsealed so we can read it.
Well, I agree as well. I think a lot of people are going to be waiting, have another reason to wait for 2023. Luckily, it's only a few days away. Again, welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Brian Buckmeyer, and we're reacting to what we just saw out of Moscow, Idaho. 28-year-old Brian Kohberger was arrested in PA earlier today as a suspect in the University of Idaho student murders. Let's go back and take a look at what Idaho Police Chief James Fry had to say at the start of the press conference just earlier today.
To recap this case, on the evening of November 12th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at about 1:56 a.m. after visiting a local bar and street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were at the Sigma Chi house before arriving home around 1:45 a.m. The two surviving roommates had also been in the community but returned around 1 a.m. On the morning of November 13th, a 911 call was made at 11:58 a.m. reporting an unconscious person at the residence. The call came from inside the home from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Moscow police responded and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. On November 17th, autopsies were conducted, and the Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 victims. The cause and manner of death was homicide by stabbing. Some had defensive wounds, and each had been stabbed multiple times. These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students. However, we do believe justice will be found through the criminal process. This was a very complex and extensive case. We developed a clear picture over time, and we stand assured that the work is not done, but be assured the work is not done. This has just started. Since November, we have remained laser focused on pursuing every lead in our pursuit of justice for the victims and their families. I recognize the frustration with the lack of information that's been released. However, providing any details in this criminal investigation might have tainted the upcoming criminal prosecution or alerted the suspect of our progress. We will continue to provide as much information as we can as the process moves forward. Today, I want to specifically thank our dedicated Moscow Police Department detectives, patrol officers, the Idaho State detectives, the Idaho State troopers, and their crime lab technicians and scientists, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the resources and personnel to conduct this massive investigation. It was the dedication of them and the persistence and the numerous hours that led to an arrest. Fortunately, these highly skilled people worked together as a cohesive team to solve this case. I also want to thank our community and the nation. Over the past 6 weeks, I've been continually reminded of how much our community cares. Locally, public support has been exceptional with kind words, food for investigators, and letters of support. You will never know how much your words of encouragement help us through these trying times.
All right, I have former FBI agent Bobby Chacon with me, so I'm not sure if I'm reading into this too much, but I have this burning question. We know that it was the Pennsylvania State Police that arrested Kohberger and not the FBI, even though they were coordinating together. Does it make a difference to you or to us that the state police arrested him rather than the FBI? And would it have changed anything procedurally in terms of getting him back to Idaho?
That's a good question, Brian. No, it doesn't change anything procedurally. I think it happens this way because he's charged in the state court system in Idaho. And FBI generally arrests people on a federal warrant, a federal arrest warrant. So while the FBI was probably present and helping in Pennsylvania, this is a state warrant. It's state to state. The state of Idaho requests help from the state of Pennsylvania. They have troopers or local law enforcement go out and effect the arrest. And then the extradition process state to state remains the same. So it's no different. It's just there was no federal arrest warrant. So the FBI agents probably took a back step and let the local authorities and the state authorities in Pennsylvania make the arrest. It now goes to a Pennsylvania state extradition. The only issue is identity. Is he the actual person named in the Idaho arrest warrant? And so that should be a fairly quick procedure in Pennsylvania court, and then he'll be on his way. But there's no significance to the fact that the Pennsylvania State Police made the arrest and not the FBI.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's that good coordination that Joe was talking about that probably makes for bad TV, but makes for great justice in real life. Well, like I said, also joining me is retired NYPD Sergeant Joe Giacolone. Joe, as a professor and author of a criminal investigations textbooks, I'm wondering, are you worried about making better criminals as we kind of look at these investigations and we kind of dissect what's going on?
Well, it's something that's definitely on your mind, right? When you're teaching these classes, like I said, I've written a book. You just, unfortunately, this happens from time to time. He isn't the first one to have a degree in or an interest in criminology and end up being a killer. We had a case in New York City that the Michelle Lee case was actually an NYPD forensic lab person, and that her then boyfriend had killed him, and he had come to the John Jay College of Criminal Justice and he'd studied it. It's something that I think that we'll find out probably more, but people like maybe this suspect here, he might have been a little arrogant in respect that he thought he might have been smarter than the cops and got away with it, and because he's learned all these different things. But no book could ever replace experience, and that's what you had with the men and women of the police department here in Moscow, the state, and the FBI.
Yeah,
and experience trumps academics every day.
Absolutely, and I think that question really comes from the fact that he was getting a PhD in criminology. So it's kind of like that show, How to Get Away with Murder. Was he studying this and trying to do it himself? Hopefully we can find that information as we continue. But thank you both for your analysis. Continuing along, let's listen to some more of that press conference that was held just earlier today. This is the director of Idaho State Police, Dendrick Wells.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kedrick Wills. I serve as the director of the Idaho State Police and certainly want to express our appreciation for your attendance here today. These tragic murders took 4 young, vibrant lives from our community. Nothing we do can bring them back. The only thing that we can do in law enforcement to honor their memories that we know of is to bring this to a successful conclusion. This has been a very difficult time for the families, the university, the community, and the state of Idaho. However, it is also proven that communities come together in tough times. Certainly appreciate the support of the local community and our national audience that has been following us as our investigators have worked through this case. I'm thankful also to you, the media partners, who have helped keep this case in the forefront that generates the tips and we hope will continue to generate information that will help us to a conclusion of this proceeding. I'd like to express our appreciation on behalf of the Idaho State Police to Chief Fry, his leadership, and the entire Moscow Police Department for the way that they handled this from the very beginning. He directed the right people to the right positions that led us to this conclusion today. I've had the utmost confidence in this investigation and in Chief Fry, as well as in Mr. Bill Thompson and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office, who've been a great partner throughout this. Nothing has deterred the commitment of the investigators who've worked on this case, regardless of the organization they represent. It's been very trying and very difficult, as you know, that it has been on those investigators as they do the tedious work that they're so good at doing. The partnerships is what's led here as well. The partnerships between Moscow Police Department, I'd like to express our appreciation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specifically the special agent in charge out of the Salt Lake City Division, Dennis Rice, and also the work that happened in the last 24 hours in Pennsylvania with the arrest with the Pennsylvania State Police and Colonel Evanchik with the Pennsylvania State Police. We appreciate what they've done across the nation to help us as well. As Bill shared, this investigation is far from over. In fact, I appreciate what he shared, that this is not an ending, but rather a new beginning. The difference now is, as he shared, that we are dictated what information we can share by the court process and by laws in our state of Idaho. And so we will share, as he shared, Mr. Thompson is absolutely committed to share everything he can share through the court process. We've got to make sure that we don't get in front of that process. And we really deeply appreciate everybody's support here. the relationships that were forged here and the partnerships that were forged have led to this. And based on that is why we're here today. And we continue to believe that the best way we can honor these 4 lives that have been taken is to make sure that we have a successful outcome here.
Well, I think Bobby said it best. The presser was really structured in a very good way, because they came out first saying we cannot answer certain questions because of the Idaho law, and then gave as much as they could in the Q&A. And Jeanette, like I said, you've been following this case from day one. I know there's probably some burning questions you would have had, but again, they wouldn't have answered them. Do you think they have all of these facts and they want to give it to us, but they just can't? That was the impression that I got. What do you think?
Yes, I do. I mean, Bill Thompson, the prosecutor there, said, they want people to be able to share the information with the readers and the viewers. So I think they would love to tell us. I really do. But they know that this is a high profile case. Every homicide case is important, but this is 4 people, 4 victims. So they have to dot all their I's and cross all their T's. They can't do anything that is going to mess up this prosecution. They have to do it all right. And so I think they would love to tell us. And he noted that they will release that document when they can. However, they just can't at this point in time. And it's all because of, it's almost like a logistical type of thing where he said they have to be able to serve him with this complaint and the paperwork in Idaho. And when he's returned to Idaho, they can't do it before then. So there's a process. So they have to, as I said, follow procedure, do it all right. And I think they would just absolutely love to tell us what they can, but they can't at this point in time. What I also found was interesting too, they said they found an Elantra. They did not find the murder weapon. They don't know where the murder weapon is at this point in time. But obviously there is something. There is something that led them to this man. I don't know if it's social media. I don't know if it's the vehicle. Who knows if it's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that led them to this man. But they had said repeatedly that they didn't just want an arrest, they wanted a conviction. So I'm wondering, if they have what they think they need for a conviction and not just that low bar of probable cause for an arrest. So I also found it interesting that he said they want people to continue to call them with information about Brian Kohberger. We know he was a graduate student at Washington State University, just over the state line in Pullman, Washington. We know that about him. We've gotten some information that he worked as some type of security guard somewhere. But what else do we know about him? We don't really know much. So I'll be interested to learn as much as we can about him and what led him to do this, according to police and the prosecutor.
Yeah. Joe, quick question for you, because you're the NYPD sergeant here. When you hear we've arrested someone, we know something about a vehicle, but we have no murder weapon, what do those 3 things kind of pan out in your mind? What does it say about their investigation?
Well, listen, they've been very thorough as it is. And the issue that comes down to is it's just not the car that they were looking for, because there's going to be lots of forensics inside that car. There's no way he could have cleaned it up, all that blood that he had on him from those attacks. So that's the forensics will tell us if the fact that he had in there. Plus, I'm sure the video surveillance from his apartment complex, I'm sure that they have that already. So they have probably him traveling back and forth from that location. And then the other aspect of it is they're also looking for his clothes, I would think. So we saw the executing a search warrant at his apartment, because you figured if he's going to change or along the way, that entire route will be searched. All the bushes and the trees alongside the roads from the house leading back to his apartment will be searched. So there are so many different working parts here, and I think they want people to come forward with information that he might have told a friend, he might have told a family member, he might have made some statements that somebody thought was unusual during, I guess, whatever, Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. So this is something that is important. That they have their guy, and they just want to make an airtight case, and they're going to continue to pile on the evidence.
Yeah. I want to toss to another video real quick, but Bobby, I want to come to you because something Joe said. They're still asking for people to give more tips. They didn't tell us what type of tips and what kind of genre or what lane, just give general tips. When you hear that as the former FBI agent, what kind of red flags or clues go off in your head as to where they are in the investigation?
Well, I think, and I hope that they're talking about this now that this suspect's in custody, just as Joe just alluded to, exactly that. I mean, in the beginning, they said, hey, if anybody in your family or any in this community started acting strange in the days right after the murders, report that in, because that's a clue. That's a, post incident marker. Now we know who it is. And now anybody that knows this guy oh yeah, he was acting a little strange, but they may not have put it together then. But now, in context, that he's now in custody for this crime, now it may mean more to people. And so I think that they're doing that in general, but I think they're much more specifically asking, if you know this guy, and he exhibited any behavior like Joe just alluded to, call in, tell us what that behavior was. Was he acting strange? Did he get rid of all clothes? Did he go clothes shopping? Whatever it is, I think that, that's what they're looking for. Now they're doing a deep dive into this guy in his life. We don't know, as Anjanette said, we don't know how long they've been on to him. They've probably been investigating him for a little while at least. And so they might have some of that, but they're now trying to do a deep dive into this guy's life. Now we have a specific person to look for, looking at his behavior, looking at his actions, looking at his movements. Unfortunately, I've been involved in a lot of searches, and that car made it from Idaho all the way back to Pennsylvania. That murder weapon could be anywhere. So this may be a case that they move forward without ever getting that murder weapon.
Yeah, that's a good point. The distance between those states and driving off, could have chucked it somewhere, buried it somewhere. You never know. Also, the cleanup aspect. It reminds me of a case that we covered at Law and Crime Network, where a witness actually testified about the peculiar actions of the defendant afterwards, smelling, I think, bleach or something like that. I'm sure my producers will remind me what case it is, but we're going to do this first. If you're just joining us, we are breaking down the Idaho press conference that took place just earlier today. As you know by now, a suspect has been named in the University of Idaho student murders. Stay with us while we listen to Latai County Prosecutor Bill Thompson open up about the investigation.
As far as Mr. Kohlberger, I can share with you that he is a graduate student at Washington State University and has an apartment residence over at Pullman. He has had an initial appearance in front of a judge in Pennsylvania. He is being held without bond, and the warrant from our magistrate judge here also provides for no bond. We understand that he's scheduled to be back in court in Pennsylvania next Tuesday afternoon, and that a public defender has been appointed for him there. The process at this point is, since he was arrested in another state, he has the opportunity to either waive extradition and return voluntarily to the state of Idaho, or if he prefers not to waive extradition, then we will initiate extradition proceedings through our governor's office. If we do that, it can take a while for him to get here. So again, I'm asking for your patience and understand that's just the way the system works. Once he gets here, he'll have an initial appearance with our magistrate. They'll deal with issues such as making sure competent counsel is representing him, and the case will be scheduled for further hearings. Your primary source of factual information is going to be the court record, because that's what the Supreme Court says we need to refer you to. So please pay attention to what's going on in court and have people there to watch and hear what's being said. As an attorney, myself and my office, we are limited on what we are allowed by the courts to say outside of the courtroom. So please just work with us. Finally, as the chief indicated, this is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning. You all now know the name of the person who has been charged with these offenses. Please get that information out there. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward. Call the tip line. Report anything you know about him to help the investigators and eventually our office and the court system understand fully everything there is to know about not only the individual, but what happened and why.
Right. Now I'm going to take a question that came in through our YouTube stream, and thank you for watching. Thank you for asking, all of you. I'll throw this one to you, Joe. This comes from Nadia S. Can you explain what the prosecutor meant by the suspect can either bring himself to Idaho or he will be brought in and that will take longer?
Well, it's about the extradition, right? So we have rules about how people can be transported via state. So I don't think he's going to fight the extradition, and the police just can't pick him up from Pennsylvania and drive him all the way back or fly him back to Idaho. That would be illegal, right? Or it could be kidnapping, or however you want to think about it that way. So there are certain rules about how to get somebody out. The first step, of course, is the arrest warrant. So once you have that arrest warrant, that tells the next jurisdiction that yes, you can go and arrest this person. Because remember, it's not the Idaho State Police that's going to Pennsylvania to arrest it; it's the local cops. So that's how the process works. People rarely will fight this, which would just prolong it. He's coming back to Idaho, and he'll be back here probably early next week because remember, you got the holiday in between everything else. So we'll see. Maybe by they said Tuesday.
All right, so what Joe said is 100% correct. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add on to it because I think, Joe, you're giving a perfect outline as to what happens when the police get that warrant. This is what happens when the defense attorney gets it, because I am a public defender in New York. We get that warrant, and it's literally, like Joe said, no one's fighting this. Because the only time you would fight it is if you're trying to say, I am not the person that this warrant says I am. And 99.9% of the time, it is. You're oftentimes not sending these warrants across state lines unless you have pretty strong evidence. If the person wants to fight extradition, then the governor of that state, in this case Idaho, would then send additional information to further prove in some sort of extradition hearing that this is the individual, this is the probable cause. If he does fight it, it would be an amazing hearing to watch in Pennsylvania. But again, 99.9% of the time, the lawyer shows him the document that is handed over from the local PD. The person doesn't fight it. And as Joe perfectly said, we'll probably see this person next week. And Jeanette, in terms of extradition in that first court appearance, we know that that's when the affidavits are going to be released. So what is the most important information that you're looking for when we do have that appearance, that we can look at the affidavits, we can look at the extradition warrants, we can look at the arrest warrant?
Well, you know, I guess I want to see the actual complaint charging him with murder. It was my understanding from listening to that, to the prosecutor, that they won't be able to serve him with that until he's back in Idaho. I may have misunderstood that, but I just want to know, I want to see the affidavit. You know, that's where the meat is, the meat and potatoes of this. That is where they lay out what led them to him, why they believe he is the person responsible for these crimes. I want to know how long they've been on to him, because they've done 300 interviews. They've received 19,000 tips, and that includes video submissions. So they've been piecing this together for a while. They knew they were looking for this white Elantra, so that might have been one of the first pieces of the puzzle, and they may have gotten tips about that. And so I want to know what was it that put them onto him?
Yeah, what was it? What tips? How many pieces? How well do those pieces fit together? Hopefully we get all those answers. But until then, now let's listen to more of that presser. Next up is Scott Green, the president of the University of Idaho.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Scott Green, president of University of Idaho. Today's news of arrest is a welcome one. It's relief to our university, our community, and our extended Vandal family. The outpouring of support over the past 6 weeks helped sustain us during the most trying time. It provided the strength that helped us navigate the international scrutiny visited on our students and employees. We are truly thankful for the compassion and acts of kindness shown to our community. Kindness is contagious, and it provided the light that reclaimed ground lost to evil and darkness. We first want to acknowledge and thank Governor Little for the early promise of financial support that enabled the university to secure our campus and focus on helping our students and our employees in the wake of the crimes. We also appreciate the Idaho State Police and the highly visible security presence that brought comfort and calm to a community shocked and confused by the senseless crimes. We never lost faith that this case would be solved and are grateful for the hard work of the Moscow Police Department and their law enforcement partners. Vast and committed FBI resources brought important expertise to this complex case. Across the board, dedicated, highly competent personnel worked this case to arrest. This crime has nevertheless left a mark on our university, our community, and our state. While we cannot bring back Maddie, Kaylee, Zaina, and Ethan, we can thoughtfully and purposefully carry their legacy forward in the work that we do. Our students come first,
and that was proven each and every day of this investigation. We are committed to safely delivering the college town atmosphere, campus experience, and high-touch quality education for which the University of Idaho is known. With time, we will heal. We will move forward together, and we will remain Vandal strong.
All right, I have to sign off for retired Sergeant Joe Giacolone in just a minute here. Joe, thank you for joining us. I want to make sure I say Happy New Year's. I know it's a last minute thing, so thank you. But before we let you go, tell our audience what comes next in this investigation. What are your final thoughts here now that we have this presser?
Well, I think the chief made a great statement, and that it doesn't end with an arrest, right? This is going to go through prosecution. When you have a homicide, you always think that this is going to go to court, and that's how you have to prepare. So the documents will be all in order, everything ready for discovery, all of the things that the lawyers will have to do on both sides between the prosecutor and the defense. Then you're going to have all kinds of hearings that are going to happen in between. So if he makes a confession, if they get a chance to talk to him, that'll be up there. The evidence that they found, if they find it, legally, all of those things will be tested. So this will be a long process, but I think everybody will get the answers that they are looking for about how this case came together. Yeah,
real quick, because I know we can probably squeeze in another question. In terms of looking for that murder weapon, Bobby, I think, hit the nail on the head. The geographical distance between these places. Can you talk to us about what they may try to do to find that weapon? Joe, that one's for you, sorry.
Oh, yes. I mean, you're going to actually, maybe if you have other police departments in along that area, that they can go and just take a look, maybe with metal detectors along the side of the road. You never know what else they're going to find when they're doing that, but you can try to do that. They'll probably conduct some line searches in and around the area, maybe with local police academies or other types of people like that can go about and join. I don't think we're going to see civilians doing this, but I don't know. I do not know how big or vast this area is. And they've had some snow too, so I think that might actually put a damper on things until the snow goes away, maybe in spring.
That's a great point. Didn't think about how that snow or that local weather would affect us. Joe, thank you again for joining us. I know we got to sign you off.
Thanks for having
me. And again, Happy New Year's.
You too. Thank you.
Bobby, let's have you piggyback off of that in terms of weather being an issue, looking for this weapon. What do you think priority number one is now that they have a suspect in terms of the investigation? Where is law enforcement looking next to make a big leap in this case?
Well, I mean, I think they're looking for people in his life that may have seen him or heard him exhibit some odd behavior. That's, I think, the next step. Now that we have a specific person that probably doing that deep dive on his life, who's around him, who does he spend time with, where does he spend time? As far as the weapon and the drive. Look, I ran the FBI dive team for 19 years, and we used to look for evidence all the time like this. Everybody likes to throw something in the water because they think, I would look at, I don't know how many bodies of water and lakes and rivers and ponds there are on that cross-country jaunt, but I have to think it's astronomical because people do like to throw evidence in water thinking they'll never find it. And so that's what I did for 19 years, was find stuff underwater. But I think that the next step is looking at his life, looking at his work, his thesis, his graduate work, who he reached out to, who he's been talking to about this, because he was researching murder and stuff. And so I think that that's the next logical step. Now that we know who this person is to do a deep dive on his life, look at who he's associated with, look at his past behavior, and see if there's any indication that can tie him even more to this. Obviously they have an affidavit on file. I believe they probably have forensic evidence at the crime scene linking to him. Whether or not they've now gotten DNA from him personally, or they, watched him in the last couple of days in Pennsylvania and got DNA to make that match, I don't know. But I have to think that they have something at the crime scene that both ties him either through forensic evidence, or they could even have a witness, I don't know, to tie him to that crime scene. There's got to be something there. Now, whether that's in the affidavit or not, I don't know, because remember, the probable cause affidavit simply has to rise to the level of probable cause to make the arrest. They don't put everything in there. It's not an exhaustive document. There will not be everything that they know in there. We will still wonder what they know absent the information that we get in the affidavit. So people should understand that when we do get those answers, they're not going to be every answer to every question. They are going to hold back. You do limit the amount of stuff that you put in those probable cause affidavits.
Absolutely. Now, Anjanette, maybe my mind is too much on the Young Thug and Tory Lanez of rap lyrics being used to prosecute people, but when Bobby mentioned his research, it came to my mind, do you think we could potentially have Kohberger's research as a PhD candidate being used against him if there's some sort of connection between the murders and his research?
It's quite possible if they feel that there is some type of connection between his research and the homicides themselves, and whether or not, if a judge determines that's admissible evidence, yes, it could. I find it astounding and yet very interesting, and I want to know so much more about the fact that he is a criminal justice criminology PhD student. I mean, that's something that sounds like something out of a book or a movie. Someone accused of murder, killing 4 people, who's in that field of study. I mean, it's almost sort of Dexter-esque, but not really, because that's a whole nother thing. But I can't believe that. When I saw that he was actually a PhD student in criminology, I thought to myself, what on earth is going on with this guy? And I'm not trying to say he's guilty or not. Obviously, there's a process that has to be followed. He has rights, just like any other criminal defendant. But I was astonished by that. I'm not completely shocked, though, that it's somebody, or that they believe it's somebody from the Washington State University, just because of the proximity. And it makes you wonder, has this guy been over to Moscow to go to the bars, or did he know any of the victims online? Had he been to a party? Who knows if he's been to a party at the house? I mean, 28 and 21, that seems like a big age difference in college, a PhD student versus, sorority and fraternity kids getting their bachelor's degrees. So who knows? I'd like to know who they believe his main target was. Part of me thinks that it probably wasn't all 4. That's just my feeling. I feel like somebody had to be collateral damage. And I know that's such a cold and callous thing. It sounds so cold and callous, but I have to think that all 4 weren't targets. I'll be interested to see if they believe all 4 were.
Yeah, you bring up a good point as to whether or not he might have been at a bar. I agree, the difference of age seems strange, but stranger things have occurred as well. We'll obviously wait for the investigation to tell us more, but great points there, Anjanette. Well, we've been talking about a news conference from Moscow, Idaho police as they announced they have a person in custody in connection with the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. We are following this case closely for you, and we're doing a deep dive. Now, here's what we know about Brian Christopher Kohberger, the man accused in connection to this homicide investigation. He was a graduate student at Washington State University in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology, working towards his PhD. Sources have said Kohberger's DNA matched genetic material found at the crime scene in Idaho. One of the ways police tracked him down was through his ownership of the white Honda Elantra, which police had been looking for. He has an extradition hearing there to get him back to Idaho on January 3rd. On November 13th, early in the morning, 4 students were murdered. Kaylee Gonclaves, Maddie Mogan, Zaina Kennerdold, and Ethan Chapin were all stabbed multiple times. They are believed to have been asleep at the time. 2 surviving roommates were not hurt and called police hours later. In the weeks that followed, there was a lot of frustration over perceived lack of information coming from the small city police department. But police did release information about that white Honda Elantra, emphasizing how important it was to reach out to the police or FBI if they had any information. Let's take a listen now to what law enforcement and district attorney's office had to say during their news conference minutes ago.
Detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on a warrant for murders of Ethan, Zaina, Madison, and Kaylee. I want to personally thank these agencies for their assistance in this case. Kohberger resides in Pullman, Washington, and is a graduate student at Washington State University. We will provide as much information as we can about the extradition to Idaho and the criminal process. However, due to Idaho state law, we are limited in what information we can release today until Kohlberger has his initial appearance in Idaho court. I want to express my appreciation to our local community, the people of Idaho, and those throughout our nation who provided information to help us investigate these murders has been very impressive. We've received over 19,000 tips, and we've conducted over 300 interviews. To recap this case, on the evening of November 12th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at about 1:56 a.m. after visiting a local bar and street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were at the Sigma Chi house before arriving home around 1:45 a.m. The two surviving roommates had also been in the community but returned around 1 a.m. On the morning of November 13th, a 911 call was made at 11:58 a.m. reporting an unconscious person at the residence. The call came from inside the home from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Moscow police responded and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. On November 17th, autopsies were conducted and the Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 victims. The cause and manner of death was homicide by stabbing. Some had defensive wounds, and each had been stabbed multiple times. These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students. However, we do believe justice will be found through the criminal process. This was a very complex and extensive case. We developed a clear picture over time, and we stand assured that the work is not done, but be assured the work is not done. This is just started. Since November, we have remained laser focused on pursuing every lead in our pursuit of justice for the victims and their families. I recognize the frustration with the lack of information that's been released. However, providing any details in this criminal investigation might have tainted the upcoming criminal prosecution or alerted the suspect of our progress. We will continue to provide as much information as we can as the process moves forward. Today, I want to specifically thank our dedicated Moscow Police Department detectives, patrol officers, the Idaho State detectives, the Idaho State troopers, and their crime lab technicians and scientists, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the resources and personnel to conduct this massive investigation. It was the dedication of them and the persistence and the numerous hours that led to an arrest. Fortunately, these highly skilled people worked together as a cohesive team to solve this case. I also want to thank our community and the nation. Over the past 6 weeks, I've been continually reminded of how much our community cares. Locally, public support has been exceptional with kind words, food for investigators, and letters of support. You will never know how much your words of encouragement help us through these trying times. I appreciate each of you and each of your kindness. Agencies and individuals from across the nation have reached out to us to express their support to this department. I'm reminded how our Moscow community, our families, and the nation has been impacted by this daily. Finally, I do want to thank our media partners for the help. You kept this in the news, you helped us with tips, you kept things going, and we truly appreciate that. And you are the product of those 19,000 tips that we received, which is an impressive number. I would like to invite Bill Thompson, the county prosecutor, up at this time.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the Latah County prosecutor. And it's sad to be here, but happy to be here at the same time. As Chief Fry indicated, A criminal complaint was filed yesterday here in Latah County, charging the defendant, Mr. Kohlberger, with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to felony burglary, which involves entering the residence with the intent to commit the crime of murder. Mr. Kohlberger, and let me preface, there is a pending case now in court, and I and my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohlberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all of the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on. So please have patience with us on that. We hope to get that to you as soon as we can. As far as Mr. Kohlberger, I can share with you that he is a graduate student at Washington State University and has an apartment residence over in Pullman. He has had an initial appearance in front of a judge in Pennsylvania. He is being held without bond, and the warrant from our magistrate judge here also provides for no bond. We understand that he's scheduled to be back in court in Pennsylvania next Tuesday afternoon, and that a public defender has been appointed for him there. The process at this point is, since he was arrested in another state, he has the opportunity to either waive extradition and return voluntarily to the state of Idaho, or if he prefers not to waive extradition, then we will initiate extradition proceedings through our governor's office. If we do that, it can take a while for him to get here. So again, I'm asking for your patience and understand that's just the way the system works. Once he gets here, he'll have an initial appearance with our magistrate. They'll deal with issues such as making sure competent counsel is representing him, and the case will be scheduled for further hearings. Your primary source of factual information is going to be the court record, because that's what the Supreme Court says we need to refer you to. So please pay attention to what's going on in court and have people there to watch and hear what's being said. As an attorney, myself and my office, we are limited on what we are allowed by the courts to say outside of the courtroom. So please just work with us. Finally, as the chief indicated, this is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning. Y'all now know the name of the person who has been charged with these offenses. Please get that information out there. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward, call the tip line, report anything you know about him to help the investigators and eventually our office and the court system understand fully everything there is to know about not only the individual, but what happened and why. Next, I'll introduce Colonel Ked Wells from the Idaho State Police. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kedrick Wills. I serve as the director of the Idaho State Police and certainly want to express our appreciation for your attendance here today. These tragic murders took 4 young, vibrant lives from our community. Nothing we do can bring them back. The only thing that we can do in law enforcement to honor their memories that we know of is to bring this to a successful conclusion. This has been a very difficult time for the families, the university, the community, and the state of Idaho. However, it is also proven that communities come together in tough times. Certainly appreciate the support of the local community and our national audience that has been following us as our investigators have worked through this case. I'm thankful also to you, the media partners, who have helped keep this case in the forefront that generates the tips and we hope will continue to generate information that will help us to a conclusion of this proceeding. I'd like to express our appreciation on behalf of the Idaho State Police to Chief Fry, his leadership, and the entire Moscow Police Department for the way that they handled this from the very beginning. He directed the right people to the right positions that led us to this conclusion today. I've had the utmost confidence in this investigation and in Chief Fry, as well as in Mr. Bill Thompson and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office, who've been a great partner throughout this. Nothing has deterred the commitment of the investigators who've worked on this case, regardless of the organization they represent. It's been very trying and very difficult, as we know, as you know, that it has been on those investigators as they do the tedious work that they're so good at doing. The partnerships is what's led here as well. The partnerships between Moscow Police Department, I'd like to express our appreciation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specifically the special agent in charge out of the Salt Lake City Division, Dennis Rice, and also the work that happened in the last 24 hours in Pennsylvania with the arrest with the Pennsylvania State Police and Colonel Evanchik with the Pennsylvania State Police. We appreciate what they've done across the nation to help us as well. As Bill shared, this investigation is far from over. In fact, I appreciate what he shared, that this is not an ending, but rather a new beginning. The difference now is, as he shared, that we are dictated what information we can share by the court process and by laws in our state of Idaho. And so we will share, as he shared, Mr. Thompson is absolutely committed to share everything he can share through the court process. We've got to make sure that we don't get in front of that process. And we really deeply appreciate everybody's support here. The relationships that were forged here and the partnerships that were forged have led to this. And based on that is why we're here today. And we continue to believe that the best way we can honor these 4 lives that have been taken is to make sure that we have a successful outcome here. One of the partnerships that's been forged throughout this is a partnership with the University of Idaho. And on that, I'd like to introduce the president of the University of Idaho, Mr. Scott Green.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Scott Green, President, University of Idaho. Today's news of arrest is a welcome one. It's relief to our university, our community, and our extended Vandal family. The outpouring of support over the past 6 weeks helped sustain us during the most trying time. It provided the strength that helped us navigate the international scrutiny visited on our students and employees. We are truly thankful for the compassion and acts of kindness shown to our community. Kindness is contagious, and it provided the light that reclaimed ground lost to evil and darkness. We first want to acknowledge and thank Governor Little for the early promise of financial support that enabled the university to secure our campus and focus on helping our students and our employees in the wake of the crimes. We also appreciate the Idaho State Police and the highly visible security presence that brought comfort and calm to a community shocked and confused by the senseless crimes. We never lost faith that this case would be solved and are grateful for the hard work of the Moscow Police Department and their law enforcement partners. Vast and committed FBI resources brought important expertise to this complex case. Across the board, dedicated, highly competent personnel worked this case to arrest. This crime has nevertheless left a mark on our university, our community, and our state. While we cannot bring back Maddie, Kaylee, Zaina, and Ethan, we can thoughtfully and purposefully carry their legacy forward in the work that we do. Our students come first, and that was proven each and every day of this investigation. We are committed to safely delivering the college town atmosphere, campus experience, and high-touch quality education for which the University of Idaho is known. With time, we will heal. We will move forward together, and we will remain Vandal strong.
Interesting. That was the presser for the 4 slain University of Idaho students, where we finally have a named suspect, Brian Christopher Kohberger. Now, again, I am joined by Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy, as well as former FBI agent Bobby Chacon. I've got a few questions as we continue. Now, Bobby, we were talking about this as we were listening to the presser. DNA of Brian Kohberger at the scene. As a defense attorney, I see that as a huge hurdle. How do you rationalize that this 28-year-old PhD student's DNA is at this party house, so to speak, but for saying that he's the murderer? What do you hear when you hear that fact?
Well, it goes all the way back to when we heard that several of the victims had defensive wounds on them, which means they put up a fight, which means they could have that genetic material under their fingernails or on their person somehow. This wasn't just somebody that attended a party there and you have trace DNA in the living room. If they have genetic material on the victims, or if they have his blood at the scene and then they match it to his DNA, then a defense attorney is going to have a really, a hard time kind of combating that kind of evidence. And that may be just the kind of evidence they have.
Yeah, I mean, his DNA on a mug, maybe not that bad, but to your point, under the fingernails, on multiple victims, that's when it gets to be a really strong case. And Jeanette, it seems like the FBI had been tracking Kohberger for quite some time. This wasn't just a quick spur of the moment. What do you think that tells us about the investigation and what they knew leading up to his arrest?
Well, they had to have had something. Something gave them some information, whether that was a person, whether it was video. We don't know, but it seems to have all started with the white Elantra that they kept saying was in the immediate area of the house. I have to think that means it was right there in front of the house. So I don't know if it started with that and they just started, things started to unravel from there. There's been some reporting out there that 90 or so white Elantras or some type of Elantra had been registered at the University of Idaho in Moscow, that the registrations for the cars have been there. I'm wondering if they pulled the registrations also for Washington State University. Maybe he had a parking permit there and they just were kind of going through all of these. So I don't know. If they were tracking him for 4 days, and that's the reporting that's out there on Twitter right now, then they had something that may have just been the Elantra coupled with some other information. I'm really interested to see this guy's cell phone data. A cell phone is basically your digital footprint. I take this thing with me. It basically leaves a digital trail of breadcrumbs. It shows where I am, where I've been. So I'm wondering if that is a piece of this puzzle as well.
Yeah. And something in the reporting that's coming up along with the 4 days you talked about, Bobby, that kind of ties in with his criminal justice background. He seems like he's smarter than the average bear, so to speak, right? This scattering of trash. Can you talk to us about that, why some would do that, and how law enforcement kind of combats that?
Sure. If we remember the famous Golden State Killer case where D'Angelo was the suspect and they waited and I think they got a Coke can or something that he had put his lips to and threw out, and then they went and seized it, out of his garbage or out of the garbage from somewhere where they were surveilling him. So the reports that they were surveilling this suspect for 4 days around Pennsylvania could have been waiting for an opportunity to get some of his known DNA, this guy's DNA, and match it to DNA we had at the crime scene. So you could have had that, so that's maybe why. Now, my thinking is that he's scattering his trash because he's a criminal justice major. Not only is he a major, he's a PhD candidate. So he's got, an excessive background in this stuff. And so maybe he realized that what law enforcement often does is what we call a trash cover, which means we actually literally go out and drag someone's trash can in, before it's collected and go through their trash and look at it. The old spy game, we did this during the Cold War with the Russians. We do it with all kinds of different suspects. And if he was aware of that, then his behavior of like throwing little pieces of trash here and there or taking his trash away from his house with him and depositing it somewhere where he thinks people aren't going to find it, would be kind of what we call forensic countermeasures. It's almost like an admission of guilt or kind of an indicator of guilt that he knows police are going to be looking at his trash, and so he's going to scatter it and get rid of it.
Yeah, definitely consciousness of guilt there. And Jeanette, when we look back now, because from November 13th till yesterday, we were saying this is taking too long, what's going on? When we now have a suspect, we know his background, we see where he was arrested, does the 47-day waiting period kind of make more sense now as to why it took so long to catch this suspect, if in fact he is the killer?
Honestly, Brian, I don't think that it really took that long. They didn't have somebody obvious, at least not as far as we know. When you look at something like this, I think you kind of think of the immediate inner circle, or, a lot of times it's somebody very close to a person. We don't know if this guy even knew, anybody in that house. You have to think that he did. But I don't think it really was as long as everybody is making it out to be. I mean, it would be different if we had, just you know, a bunch of red flags pointing to this guy, whether, you know, somebody had a restraining order or, you know, we had all these people coming out of the woodwork saying it was him and he was caught, you know, pretty much red-handed. But we were talking about a case where you had 4 college kids, a house where everybody's in and out of there all the time, a densely populated area, a fraternity house, a stone's throw away where there had been a party. So you kind of start at the inner circle and work your way out. And there had to have been something that led them to this guy if he is indeed, you know, guilty. And they say he's the guy. So I'm not sure, you know, the 47 days was really that long. Everybody wants answers immediately. I mean, we wanted all of the answers. We wanted to know what they were doing and what they knew. But when you look at how something like this with 4 different victims, and you have to look at the people surrounding all 4 victims, when you look at that, I think it may not have really been as long as everybody is saying, or at least the people on the internet are saying. I have to tell you, I just got a direct message on Twitter from somebody, a viewer, who said, you know, I really appreciate you, and he and named another national reporter covering this case. I appreciate your coverage, and now I feel really bad that I was bashing the cops on Facebook and on the Facebook groups, because obviously they were doing things that we didn't know about.
Yeah, I think that is a very big of the person to reach out to, and very correct. Well, we have brand new video showing the moment Bryan Kohberger officially got his undergraduate degree in criminal justice. Kohberger walked across the stage at DeSales University in Pennsylvania in May. He was attending graduate school at Washington State University to eventually get his PhD. They may be 2 different states, but the 2 cities are not far from each other, only just 20 minutes away or so. One of the few times we've actually heard the victims is through body camera footage. On September 2nd, law enforcement responded to the off-campus house for a noise complaint. Officers arrived to an apparent house party, but none of the students who later became victims were there. One of the men at the party got a hold of Madison Mogan on the phone. Here's some of that conversation.
Can you hear me, Maddie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Do you live at 1122 Queen Street?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, hey, the reason that we're here is that we received a noise complaint of loud music, partying, okay? Once we approached the house, people started running away. They left a bunch of alcohol behind. We're not even coming for alcohol. We're coming for the noise complaint. And then we sat here for approximately 10 minutes trying to knock on the door, and no one would come to the door until these 2 gentlemen came down and actually answered the door. So right now, if I can, I would like to collect your information, your name, number, your date of birth, and I'm guessing, and I want your current address also as well, okay?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. So let me go ahead, and what's your first name? Maddie?
Maybe.
And how do you spell that, Maddie?
My legal name is Madison. It's Madison.
What's your middle name, Madison?
May, May.
Okay. What's your last name?
Mogan, Mogen.
Mogen?
Yep.
Okay. What's your date of birth, Madison?
01.
Okay. And what's your current address?
1122 King Road.
Okay. And are you a student at U of I?
Yep.
Okay.
I will graduate with a bachelor's. I'm still getting my master's.
All right, Madison. So here's the deal. Okay. They've already said that no one here lives at, none of the occupants that live at this address are here right now. So now you have a house full of random people. You need to let them know that the noise needs to come down, okay? We just received a noise complaint. We want that music turned down. And we don't want to come back again tonight. If we have to come back again tonight, then there's going to be even more problems, okay?
I see both sides.
Sounds good. I'm just as frustrated. I'm also so sorry once again.
Hey, I understand, okay? It's just, I mean, if I were you guys, I'd probably just come home and make sure that whoever is partying here is keeping it down to a minimum, okay?
Yeah, we're going to pick all of them.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to leave, okay? And again, if I have to come back later tonight, like I said, I just want to express that there's going to be some time.
Bobby, I want to thank you so much for joining us here. I understand it's the New Year's is coming up, so I want to wish you and your family Happy New Year. And Anjanette, I'm going to come to you with the last question. Final thoughts as we finish this presser, and we're looking forward to January 3rd for the next step in this, the Bryan Kohberger arrest and brought back to Idaho.
Well, I'm thinking about the families right now of Maddie and Ethan, Xana and Kaylee. A memorial service is being held or is going to be held today for Maddie and Kaylee. So my thoughts are with them, and looking ahead to the hearing that will be held next week and what we will learn from that. So there's still a lot that we don't know, and obviously a lot of investigation that has to be conducted.
Yeah, of course. And Angela, thank you as well, and Happy New Year's to you as well. I would agree. We're looking forward to the release of that affidavit, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're all looking for. Give us the answers as to why you believe this is a suspect. I'm Brian Buckmeyer from the Law and Crime Trial Network. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a Happy New Year. All the best.